If you're watching this video, you read the title, so you already know what my overall thoughts are on Squid Game Season 3. Now, let's get into it. The structure of this video is going to be quite simple. We're going to be dividing it in multiple bullet points, so bite-sized pieces and bite-sized points of how I feel about the season overall. Hello my sweet berries, welcome back to the channel, and to new viewers, hi, I'm Belle and I'm a mess from hell. Today we're going to be talking about Squid Game Season 3. So of course you read the title as I said originally, so it didn't leave the best impression on me, but I want to justify why I say that. First off, the way in one word I would describe it is underwhelming. It just kind of fell flat. Season 2 felt like a constant build-up to something that just wasn't there. What I mean by that is that, of course, they've said Season 2 and 3 are supposed to be watched together, but that doesn't actually change what they want it to change. It feels like a sad excuse for their lack of care after Season 1. In a way, I can quite understand it, because I had seen some interviews with the director, the writers, and the creator of Squid Game. He was basically pushed by Netflix to pump these seasons out constantly, and it was no longer something he loved. However, while it is understandable, I feel like there were multiple things, not just story-wise, that led to this kind of flopping for me. I know, of course, stats, numbers, it wasn't a flop in the slightest. I'm just saying, for me personally, and for quite a few people I've seen have ranted how it didn't solve anything for them. So let's start with my points. A cringeworthy CGI baby steals the show and the spotlight. So, as you saw from the introduction to this point, it's about the baby. Now, you know me, I have this thing with children in media, and I get annoyed a lot of the time by them. But this time I really tried to give it a shot, because they were emphasizing how important it was. And with the whole message of the show, it felt like, right, maybe we're going somewhere with this. Maybe the baby's actually going to have some impact that isn't just, oh, it's a baby, so it has to be important simply because it's a baby, you know? There's no extra, why is the baby important? Oh, the baby's important just because it's a baby, but when it's inserted in the games, it's like, oh wow, I love that plot twist. I can't wait to see where it goes. And it just leads to nothing, really. All it accomplishes is showing us how player 333 is a horrible father. It gives us the hilarious moment with the junkie hallucinating. We get everyone fighting over whether to kill it or not. But there is no actual, like, oh, maybe we should have a game kind of centered around the baby and how to get past the challenges while holding the baby. We're just kind of thrown, right, penultimate challenge, baby. And then afterwards, we go to see, right, what's going to happen with the baby now? And the last challenge doesn't actually involve much of a challenge, if you will. Like, sure, it's a moral dilemma, which is basically the premise of the show, but there is no connection between the baby's importance to the moral dilemma and its importance in the games. And if I was a VIP watching this, I'd just say, what the hell, you promised that the baby would be entertaining, but you kind of didn't offer us that entertainment, because didn't contribute anything. Also, the CGI. I'm so sorry. When I first saw it, I just burst out laughing. I was watching it with my family, Do you know how embarrassing that was? I just could not keep it in. Is it just me or has the entire budget dropped? Not only was it... Okay, side rant. I know the entire thing is supposed to be a rant about this, but this wasn't even in my script or my points that I made up for this. The budget seems like it's just gone downhill, which should be completely the opposite, really. And, like, aside from the masks, a lot of people have pointed out the VIP masks, but aside from those, which a lot of people have also put down to the lighting, what about the blood? Has anyone seen the watery Junhee blood scene? Like, it's all watery, and even I, like, my mum was watching it with me, my parents were watching it with me, and she pointed it out just the second I did as well. Is it just me, or is that watery? I said, and she was saying, I thought exactly the same thing, and then we both kind of agree it may have been the lighting, or because it's not meant to be kind of having such a strong source of lighting directly upon it, so it's not as dense as normal blood. But generally, everything, the hide and seek game felt claustrophobic, and I know that's probably part of it, but it didn't feel like one of these grandiose sets anymore. And then the final game, they did some weird optical illusion thing that didn't even work with making us think that the depth of the like columns of shapes was a lot higher than it was, but it didn't look high. Every time someone would fall, you'd think that was a survivable height, because they didn't do the optical illusion right. If you couldn't have the money to get the set done, why not change that last half-hearted game entirely? Because I personally would have preferred it. And back to the baby, sorry about the side rant. There are two more things. The CGI itself, people have said online, worse than Twilight's baby. I haven't even seen Twilight, and even I know that's bad. If they're saying that it's worse than Twilight, something that came out how many years ago now? Thought so. You're telling me that something that came out so long ago and that is normally mocked online, is being compared to what was, up until a few months ago, one of the greatest shows that make you question the entire basis of society. And now it's just another part of the structure of society. In a way, side rant again, this is kind of funny and ironic that the show that's supposed to be dismantling the hierarchy and showing how bad the rich manipulating the poor and using them for entertainment is actually part of it. Because how much does a Netflix subscription cost? Sure, not much, but then if you add it on top of all the other subscriptions that 90% of us, at least the lucky ones that have enough money to put food on the table, most of us have these subscriptions that probably impact our monthly spending quite a bit in the long run. And it's like, we're lucky to be watching this. We're like the VIPs, but in a way, we're also not the VIPs, because there are VIPs above us that are watching us watch this and are like tugging along the strings, waiting for the suspense to build and then just kind of drop us. It feels almost like a last attempt by the creators to kind of be like, right, this is final. Let's hope they don't want any more. It's something that's been happening a lot in media, that it's so bad, it feels intentionally bad. The final sacrifice is honestly just emotional manipulation. There is no, oh, Gi-hun's a good person for saving the baby, right? That's what they want to make you feel, that he's the good person and because of his kindness the baby survived. It actually wasn't because he even cared about the baby, it was because Junhee asked him to do it. He wouldn't have done it. Basically, from what he said, it was like, I promised Junhee. If she hadn't asked him to take care of the baby, what that implies is that he would have dropped it. Now, obviously, we're meant to think that Gi-hun would never do that, but we also used to think that 333 couldn't be such a bad father. Cue him trying to throw his baby off a ledge to survive. Which, honestly, can I just say, I'm sorry, but you want me to feel bad for a bundle of CGI that just doesn't even act like a baby? You can excuse the bad CGI if the baby acted like a flipping baby. You're telling me it starts crying when it's quiet, but then it's completely fine when, like, the lights turn on all of a sudden, people are screaming, there's gunfire, people are dropping to the ground, it's just sleeping. Screams, like, there's no... And it's understandable that every baby's different, okay? I wasn't exactly a very normal child myself, but the tendencies of a child, whether psychotic or not, should still be considered when creating a fictional child that has otherwise not been pointed at being this special case. Also, the plot armor of this child, can I just say, if I was in there, if any of us were in there, and we really, and I mean really wanted to get rid of that baby, we could have done it. You're telling me that he could not... The thing that annoys me, right, is they try to make Gi-hoon seem like this normal guy, but then in season 3, they made him like this master manipulator with manipulation tactics that were so obvious. Like, it could be understandable the first time. Maybe someone gets manipulated into falling off or whatever, but like 5 times in, he manipulated people in that game, I believe, and they still believed it. And 333 was just... 333's writing choices, I've seen people try to defend it, but they're just like, you're misunderstanding his character. But I do understand his character, but it still wasn't handled well. The character itself wasn't the problem, it's the direction in which they took the character. It would have been lovely to see 333's dilemma with being a good father, with still trying to be a father to the baby, even though Junhee hated him, or tried to be this kind of cordiality between them, like, I don't like you, but I'm still gonna try and be a good parent for our child. She needs her dad in her life. But the baby didn't even have a name, did she? Like, everyone just referred to it as the baby. It wasn't humanized. And you could not feel sorry for it. The plot armor of it extends far further than simple, oh, it's a baby. Because what do you mean? This wonderful woman killed her own son for it. I can understand killing your own son for Junhee. This lovely girl, I would kill this thing that's kind of gone rogue for this sweet, kind girl that's trying to bring light into this place. She's young, she hasn't really lived, she's confused, scared, but she's also not going down the path of, I'm just gonna kill anything in my sight, like her son. But she didn't specify it was because she cared about Junhee, specifically because they built a bond or anything. She just took it as a mother and her daughter. Like, you'd really kill your own son over this random mother and daughter, which I know she wasn't a random mother with her child, but again, they should be specifying more and explaining these subtleties that we're supposed to just assume. It's not subtleties that we can catch, it's subtleties that we're supposed to assume based on a vague description of how the actors are trying to interpret a character. But at the same time, they're having to kind of give all these double meanings, these twists and turns to a character that's doing something but saying something else. Point 2. Pacing is a train wreck. Something that also really angered me this season was that they built up all these characters, like Hyunju, Junhee, and Gwemja, to be like these like the lights in the dark. And you have them doing the hide and seek arc, and then as soon as the baby comes to light, everyone just starts dropping like flies. Again, I don't like talking about the bundle of CGI, but it clearly impacted it, because the literal reason they didn't kill Junhee off sooner is because it's incredibly frowned upon in Korean media to kill off a pregnant woman. So her plot armor was the baby, and everyone else's plot armor got literally wrecked by the baby. The baby should have died and everyone could have lived. And I know you're saying, well, Belle, that's not how it would have worked, but that's how it was presented to us. So let me introduce this point to you about the other ladies. Junhee, I will get to you, darling, but your arc is something that, it was over before it even started. We had Hyunju talking about her hopes and dreams of finally getting the surgery she needed. She wanted to go to Thailand to get the surgery, to feel more beautiful in her own skin. But we didn't have really that educational moment for the rest of the characters to kind of, in a way, acknowledge the femininity, the beauty in her almost masculine femininity, because even though she is a trans woman, she still retains that tomboyness, and I'm glad they acknowledge that kind of like trans women can be tomboyish. That doesn't mean they're not women, and I don't want to start the whole trans debate because this isn't the focus of the video, but I loved her character, and I really appreciated the bold choice they made with integrating such a controversial character in such a, again, controversial but deeply loved show. The issue I had with it was Hyunju kind of became almost like Gi-hoon's sidekick. It felt like she was going to become Gi-hoon's sidekick after Jung-bae and In-ho were kind of, well, spoiler alert, one was killed, the other was supposedly killed, actually betrayed them and everything. And obviously Daeho was kind of out of service, let's just say, because we all know why. And it just felt kind of like we didn't explore Hyunju enough. I mean, sure, we had season 2, but again, it felt like a build. And the build didn't land anywhere to then drop. It just kind of climbed and then dropped immediately. The way you're supposed to do it with shows like this is you're supposed to build something, kind of land it, and then drop the audience suddenly. The sudden drop would have been fine if you'd landed your point that you seemed so hard to be trying to make, but there was no point to begin with. You were just throwing in plot twists on random facts that never felt like a cohesive storyline. Then we go with the mother and son. We see her talking about her son only after with Gi-hoon, like a sad excuse to kind of make it seem like she's a bad mother but also a good mother at the same time, and it's supposed to make you question her morals, your morals, everyone's morals, but she's talking to an emotionless person who doesn't even tell her anything in response, and immediately after that she makes one of the most selfish decisions and just kills herself. We don't have time to grieve. And it would have been fine if she had that character moment with Gi-hoon, right? If he'd healed from his trauma, and of course he can't magically heal from the trauma, but how is her death going to impact him more than her words? I understand actions speak louder, but she came to him in a moment of grief and expressed from parent to parent her concerns, her thought process, the sacrifice she made to protect someone else's life, and we have kind of no reaction to it. We have action and no reaction. Aside from Hyunju's death, which I feel was handled quite well in comparison to the rest of the season, but it was so obviously going to happen. In a way, the way it was obvious kind of made it better, because you had Gweomja and Junhee being surprised, but you as the audience member know that if Hyunju doesn't go through that door and escape now, she won't survive. And it feels like she had that acceptance. She knew what was going to happen if she went back to warn them. And that felt like a selfless sacrifice. The thing that doesn't make sense is the way 333 didn't think. Blue person, no attack, I no kill. Like, he's supposed to be hyped up to be the smart person, and you could say, oh, it's intentional because he wanted more money. But why would he, a man so supposedly smart, want Junhee to hate him more when he's supposedly made all this effort to make her not hate him? Which then brings me to the fact that his character was handled horribly, and I don't even want to go into full analyses of how weirdly their relationship dynamic was not explored, and how the lack of his consent, of her consent being respected by his selfish motives. I don't want to get into that, but I did not like the pressure he was putting on her. She said, no, dude, get a life, fuck off. Respectfully. Actually, no, not respectfully. You do not deserve respect. Because if we're supposed to care about that bundle of CGIs, I have all the right to hate you for what you supposedly were trying to do to it, even though you didn't really ever make a real attempt at it. Because when you tried, you kind of just didn't go through with it, and that's the whole dilemma that, oh, maybe he wasn't such a bad guy. I don't care, he was a bad guy. He tried to kill a lot of people. He killed a lot of people and did so for no reason because he's supposed to be this complex character. But then we have him teaming up with people who are supposed to be kind of these like morally black, kind of like irredeemable people. And most of the deaths felt like they were just goofy and feed the memes. His was kind of... how do I put it? They didn't give him enough time to fully see him lose his sanity. We could have had him kind of like become a full-on red player and start killing anything and anyone he sees before finally getting to Junhee and kind of being on this route of having twisted his mother's words in his head and thinking, right, my mum told me I need to kill to get out of here. Just kill to get out of here. And still, you could see him retain that slight sanity for his mother. So why we couldn't have had his mental state being explored more is beyond me. Then, of course, we had the repetitiveness of the voting. Sure, in Season 2 it felt like the voting was kind of like the key part of it. But we knew in Season 3 that it wasn't really that important. Like, the formula was overdone. In Season 2, what we wanted was what we got. To see the formula implemented with new characters, new people, and new strategies, and how that would impact our main character in trying to stop the games. In Season 3, though, the main character is kind of slightly out of commission. Well, not slightly, he kind of is out of commission, so we're supposed to see the development of the side characters. But instead, we just get kind of like this recycled stuff until Gi-hun gets back on his feet. And obviously there's this, oh, Gi-hun isn't around so everyone starts dying part to it, which is just weird. Characters that should have died didn't die, and characters that did shouldn't have, and Junhee, my gosh, that was the stupidest death. You're telling me a twisted ankle does her in? A twisted ankle. I get that it hurts, but you could have shown, like, the mother's adrenaline and her pushing through. Like, the VIP was hyping her up so much. We wanted to see him proven right. We wanted to see Junhee's development in becoming the mother she was hesitant to be. We could have had the start of an arc of Gweomja teaching Junhee how to be a mother and taking her in like a daughter, but instead we just have Gweomja abandoning her supposedly kind of adoptive daughter, and we just see her kind of breaking down, and that moment's fabulous because she feels alone, but she realizes she has her baby and now her maternal instinct is supposed to kick in. So it's kind of like, for me, all these subplots with the three women should have been taken into account with, if we do one, we're going to do the other, but change it in a way that doesn't feel repetitive and overdone. So we could have had Gwamja committing suicide and the repercussions on Junhee, but we could have had that moment of acceptance from Gwamja and Junhee blaming herself still, but we still needed more time to feel Gwamja's sacrifice and the guilt eating up at her that made her feel sick to her stomach enough to take her own life and join her son and husband in the afterlife. We could have had Hyunju, her conclusion was immaculate because she sacrificed herself for her friends, but we didn't have that moment of stunned realization, if I go back I'll die. I feel like if we'd had that moment of realization from such a smart character, we could have had a more impactful death scene, which again, it was wonderful the way they handled her death, but I mean, that's only in comparison to the rest of it. I'm giving them serious props for this, but the bar's in hell. So we had, well, actually no, the bar is up, like kind of up there, like this ceiling, and the expectations from season 2 were way above that, and they just kind of plummeted, like seriously plummeted. They had the option to see, we didn't see Junhee playing as anything but the pregnant girl, right? Her entire plot was just the pregnant girl. We didn't have Junhee being an actual person. Hyunja going back for her could have been the statement of friendship, of devotion, but instead we had it's for the baby. It's all for the baby, which nobody really cared about until it was born. Like, everybody was like, Junhee, you okay? Like, it was mostly about Junhee until the baby. The baby always goes back to the freaking baby. We could have had, if they'd been brave enough to do this, we could have had her having a miscarriage. I know that seems grim, but think about it. In an environment so stressful, with her barely eating, people sacrificing their food to feed her, but the portions are so tiny she can barely eat to feed herself. We could have seen the baby being, I don't know, disabled, having some kind of problem that requires then the game's handlers to kind of intervene and see the morals of the VIPs, how maybe one of the VIPs thought, oh, that's a cute baby, stole the baby. We could have had so much with the baby again, but it just fell flat because it's like, well, baby's born, now we can kill off Junhee without repercussions from the media, and then these characters were all just brushed off because, again, baby. They... I don't know if this is going a bit far, but you can tell this was written by a man. In the kindest way possible. If you want to capture the mother's spirit, you should probably talk to a woman who is either a mother or just has the basic maternal instinct to tell you what decisions are morally correct for a mother to take, right? Because if I personally had been there, or let's take my mother. I'm not a mother, so let's take my mother. If my mother was there, sure, it wouldn't have been nice, but she would have killed anyone for me. Now, I'm not saying all mothers are nice, but come on. If you're trying to kind of show her being this selfless, incredible person who loves her son above all else and is trying to kind of repent for her previous lack of care, you're just showing constant failure, tumbling. It's just everything's crumbling. Nothing's built up the way it should be. So you have the kind of the tension building up, but nobody put the flipping glue to keep everything from breaking and falling when slight pressure is placed upon them. And we can see that with Gi-hun coming back and everyone suddenly being slightly better in a way, because we see... I don't know how to explain this in a way that doesn't feel like I'm bashing Gi-hun. Him taking the baby across was probably one of the stupidest things. I feel like decision-wise, it was trying to redeem him for killing off Daeho and his stupid plan to begin with. But it didn't actually prove him to be any better of a man than he already was. Like, we saw him protecting Junhee before. We saw him and Inho saving Gweomja from the merry-go-round game, the doors game where the people had to go into doors to get a number and blah blah blah. We had them being a team. They no longer felt like a team. The ladies did until they all died. But they just ruined good characters, and I could go on for ages about this, but I know you're probably going to see this very, like, in shorter form, but I've been going on for 48 minutes with this. I'm going to get into it fully later, but let's just start with the island, because I want to point out that I am considering this in the whole pacing issue with the subplot of finding the island, and it kind of feels like it was wrapped up too quickly. Junho didn't really get any development from it. The captain subplot just ended up with two of them surviving, everyone else dying. The guard subplot ended up with them suddenly calling the coastal guard, even though, it doesn't make sense. There is just no payoff for either the character or the viewer, and if that's the way you wanted us to feel, good job, show, you did it exactly right. Point number 3, undercooked characters. Digging deeper into the characters, I want to focus on Gi-hun in particular. His character being undercooked. What I mean by that is he goes from this like mission-focused hero, or kind of anti-hero in a way, to this just numb, nothing character. And I can understand that, but him and Inho's bond, if you will, in very big quote marks, in quotation marks, that being like their bond of Gi-hun trying to chase around the front man and Inho trying to chase around Gi-hun, and having this kind of roundabout way of them always tripping each other up, could have made for a brilliant subplot. And there are so many subplots that the main plot is lost. That's the issue with it. The plot holes come from the fact that the main plot isn't actually a main plot, it's just assisting the subplots now. In season 2 there was a main plot and the subplot, simple. But now that the subplot has kind of branched in two different directions, it feels like the people creating the show didn't have brains big enough to handle more than two storylines at once. So they just terminated one. The suddenness of it all could have been good if they'd handled it correctly. Speaking of Inho and Gi-hun, the reveal. It was just so muted. There was no like sudden outburst. There was no I'm gonna kill you kind of moment. Sure, there was a subtle like, oh no you didn't. But if your lifelong friend dies right in front of you and the person that killed him was someone who up until now you thought you hated, but then there was no like twist of him thinking, Inho, this wonderful guy I thought was dead. There was no... The actor wasn't the issue. Again, Lee Jung-jae captured Gi-hun. He will forever be remembered as Gi-hun. He will not be replaced by anyone. And the writing, you can say whatever you want about it, but his portrayal of it is brilliant. It's astounding, and I love it. But everything else just kind of undercooked his interaction with Inho, and that climactic moment that just didn't resonate with me and many others. We also kind of have this, if you will, like these moments of some side background characters being ever so slightly developed, but then just disappearing. And we're meant to care about them, but we never really knew them, so how are we supposed to care about something we never knew in the first place? Point 4, tonal whiplash and diluted themes. Okay, my next point comes with a very big focus on like the change of narrative and the change of the moral of the story. It was in season 1 this critique of capitalism and the upper 1%, the upper class controlling the lower and everyone trying to dismantle the sub message, the smaller message underneath this form of entertainment, which then interestingly led to a lot of backlash to people trying to recreate the games, because it showed again the out of touchness of people at the top that were trying to make this trend part of their career and just to boost the money in their wallets. They took this critique of the 1% and created it as almost a weapon of the 1% to bash the poor with again. And people were finally not having it. They were finally being called out for this, and it created a change, a subtle change in society, if you will. People were finally, like, it feels like people were, in the least corny way possible, but actually the most cringiest, they were escaping the so-called matrix of the world. They were finally realizing that while they had free will, a lot of it was controlled by the upper 1%, and it felt liberating for a lot of people to finally be able to see past the differences and realize, we're all just under the thumb of these rich people, so why are we arguing in the first place? Maybe we should start focusing on the real quote-unquote enemy here. And that critique felt real. It resonated with audiences. Just to then kind of die down into this whole new plot point of humanity. What is humanity? If Gihun didn't even finish his flipping sentence, oh my gosh! I laughed when he died. I laughed when one of the characters I love the most died. I don't know what that says about me or about the show. It says to me that his fall looked exactly, I could see the green screen, actually the blue screen, and him being brought up and down through this with the wires and everything. The fall wasn't in slow motion. It felt like they'd actually just lowered him at that speed and thought, yeah, we're not going to speed it up. Again, with the CGI, all the issues with just how cheap it felt, the plot just... The baby. How can you preach humanity when the thing that's kind of supposed to be the holder of this stability and this humanity isn't even human? It doesn't act like a baby. The most memorable moment with the baby for me was the circle guard feeding her a bottle. The circle guard we'd never spoken to, we'd never interacted with. They feel more human than the baby. The VIPs, personally, I found a couple of them interesting, and I liked seeing different VIPs compared to the original ones we got, which were good representations of the top 1%, not really enjoyable to watch in the I'm grossed out by them, but they're good characters way. The best description I heard from somebody was that the original VIPs felt like billionaires. The VIPs from season 3 felt like millionaires. And that's the way I put it, because it also feels like the VIPs in season 3 were more human, but less human at the same time, if that makes sense. More human in the sense that they had more character moments of them giving the commentary that was useless, boring, unrequired. We had these moments of sudden sexism for no reason. I don't know what the hell that was about. The masks looking incredibly cheap. The frontman just seeming so uncomfortable, which I wouldn't blame him, because I would be as well if I was in a room with them. I don't know how the female VIP wasn't just completely creeped out, because I would be. The VIP that was rooting for Junhee, honestly, I quite enjoyed most of their interactions with him trying to kind of be this comedy relief. I enjoyed most of the VIPs kind of interacting, the playful banter, but they didn't come off as characters I was supposed to hate. Because of their subtle kind of like funniness, their subtle comedic relief, I started to like them more than the main characters I was supposed to root for. And as characters themselves, they were shallow and I didn't like them, but the change of pace was something that I was really happy about, because we finally weren't getting this washed and redone, just same formula over and over and over and over. We were finally seeing something new. And then they kind of didn't give them a moment of how they reacted to Gi-hoon's final statement, which wasn't even a statement because he didn't finish the sentence again. Humans are. I know that's supposed to be left up to interpretation. It still doesn't make it any less annoying that the whole point of the show leading up to that moment didn't actually have an ending. Point 5. Plot holes on plot holes. Plot holes! Oh, the plot holes. There are three main points I want to talk about. Again, the first one, drum roll please, what is it? The baby! Yes, you heard it right. Oh wow, who would have guessed? Aside from that one circle guard feeding it, how was it eating? How was it drinking? How was it changing? Now you could say, oh, Junhee obviously fed it. Yeah. But, like, it didn't have nappies? Were they just kind of taking it to the bathroom? And we saw none of the struggles of the parenting. Because again, she died before there was any real parenting to be had, you know? We could have seen the repercussions the birth could have had on her body instead of it just being, oh, a broken ankle. We could have seen her death be more than the broken ankle and how the baby could have been the reason for it. Something that I could have done to solve the entirety of 222 and 333's relationship could have been no broken ankle. She dies because the strain of her body on her body from the birth was just too much. And she tried to get across, and in the end, she kind of throws the baby to Gi-hoon and says a couple of words of realization before she finally gets hit by the rope, the metal rope. She says, like, take care of her, please. Take care of her like she were me. I give myself to you in the form of my child, in a way. And 333's reaction being kind of, instead of this just shock and like surprised Pikachu face, he could have had this like, not I want to kill the baby for the money. He could have had the, wow, Junhee couldn't even trust me with my own child. Maybe I am such a bad father. But then that being twisted in his head as the game went on, because again, I don't like the way it just kind of went to the final game immediately. We could have had him twisting that in his head as the games went on to the baby's the reason Junhee died because the pregnancy put strain on her body and that's the reason she's dead. But then, in his final moments, that could have turned into, but I'm the reason she was pregnant and alone during her pregnancy. And him taking himself out to leave Gi-hoon with the baby. See how easy it is to have a whole character arc and make it resonate with the audiences if you just put a little thought in it? This could have easily been solved. How did I on the spot think that, but none of the screenwriters thought, maybe this should just be tweaked slightly to make more sense and feel less like, oh, the steps were conveniently slippery enough for her to suddenly kind of topple over and roll. Because also, we didn't even see her kind of hurt her ankle in the first place. I've had broken ankles before. Twice I've broken the same ankle. I had to physically roll down an entire hill and land on my ankle and put my entire body weight on my ankle for it to twist that badly. And then I had to kind of, again, slip on mud and put my entire body weight on that ankle for it to twist so badly. But she rolled. Her body weight wasn't on her ankle in the first place. And I don't blame the actress again, because I don't know what scenes were filmed first and what scenes were filmed afterwards, and whether she knew her character was supposed to fall on her ankle and how to do it safely. The next plot hole I want to discuss is the island subplot. The part of it that just doesn't make sense to me is the whole like tracker disappearing is supposed to feel like hopelessness, and we're supposed to feel like maybe Junho is almost supposed to listen to Inho, but then he proves us wrong. I feel like that was kind of what they wanted to happen until they messed it up. What I mean by that is that we have the whole plot twist with the captain, and while I enjoyed there being that subtle plot twist, I feel like we had enough pressure on Junho to begin with. I don't feel like we needed that extra pressure, but it was nice to have that companion. While I do understand that, again, don't trust anyone, blah blah blah, but we could have had that in the main plot. See, problem solved! Because maybe Gi-hun could have come to the realization that 333 wasn't a good guy because she didn't even trust the guy that she got pregnant with, so how was he supposed to trust him in that final moment? Why does everyone go from smart to stupid, smart to stupid, smart to stupid to this mastermind to completely dumb? Okay, back to Junho. The thing about that is that the plot hole of the matter is that we had him lose track of Gi-hun and be kind of hopeless, but then he kind of just randomly finds the island. We could have had this plot twist again that instead of the captain, we could have had the plot twist that maybe the island was hidden from maps. It wasn't on a map, because if they had the money to do these things, they had the money to change the maps. We could have had him come across it from, say, not the land, not the sea, but from the sky, which would have made more sense. But I understand he didn't have the money for it, so him having this journey with the captain could have been like almost a world tour, if you will, a smaller than a world tour, a country tour, an ocean tour, because they could have gone on all sorts of adventures together, and then their group could have suddenly expanded with Gi-hun's confused men, and they could have had this whole team expedition that wasn't just boat on, boat off, boat on, boat off, boat on, boat off, boat. Oh, that guy died. Oh, boat on, boat off. Oh, that guy died. Oh, that guy died. Oh, everyone's dying. Everyone's dying. Oh, but the one kind of guy that's spoken a lot more than the others, he's gonna survive. Yeah. But then they suddenly just encounter player 246 running. That whole plot point just felt like a fever dream. The 246 and the triangle guard. It just felt so random and out of nowhere, because they kind of built it up and then it just went nowhere again. Her having the moment with like the second in command and her finally besting him. Honestly, I was rooting for her. I'd lost hope until she finally got through to him. That fight was immaculately done because it made me believe that she was actually dead for a moment. But it just showed that kind of like she didn't really want to live anymore, and then Gi-hun got through to her. So why did we have such almost a nothing character, if you will, go through the emotional realization, but not the main character? But anyway, sorry, going back to the plot hole, the reason I think it's a plot hole in the first place is because there's this like fog that's preventing anyone from seeing the island, but then they get there, they encounter him, and that would have been fine if it wasn't so incredibly coincidental and blah blah blah. Let's ignore that for a second. The coastal guard. They said it would take them, around 2 hours to get there? Yet they get there immediately. Didn't the captain say there were strong waters? Could he have lied? Probably, but still. Wasn't there, what was preventing the coastal guard from going that far in the first place? Anyone with a sane mind would have gone to check out if multiple people were reporting the same thing. The moment people were reporting these masked men, if 2 reports of masked men came up, wouldn't you start thinking, they clearly weren't together and knew each other. I'm talking about Junho and his companions when they got taken to the police station for breaking into the house of the captain, having to kill the dog. Oh, I hated that. I hate animal cruelty, but honestly, I understand it. It felt like, I understand that it's supposed to be a critique of the justice system, but then the suddenness of everyone just being able to find the island once it was kind of found, if you will, just feels like it defeats the entire purpose of there being this big search in the first place. I know I didn't explain this very well, and there are going to be people who have explained it much better, so please just vaguely understand what I'm trying to say here. The math's not adding up. Because I don't know, I haven't actually checked this myself, but I've seen people talk about the fact that the death toll in the hide and seek game, the numbers of people that actually died versus the number that was left of people and how many they counted had died, wasn't entirely correct. I haven't checked exactly what they got wrong, but I've just seen people talking about it, so I wanted to throw it in here in case you thought I might have missed something. I personally won't be expanding upon it because my main focus is kind of more story-based stuff, not logistically, but I'd really be interested in someone fact-checking me on that. I'm not claiming to be this, like, most reliable source in the world. I'm just trying to share my thoughts and opinions, so if there's anything that I've got wrong in this, please feel free to correct me in a respectful manner because my mental health can't take criticism very well. Point 6. A finale that left much to be desired. So what I want to talk about next is the finale. I understand what you're thinking. Belle, why are you talking about the finale like right in the middle? What's the finale got to do with the middle point? But the reason I'm talking about the finale and making its own point is because it's so divisive that me making a statement on it could be completely contradicted by a completely different video, and I just want to make it clear that I understand there are differences in opinion. I'm just sharing mine in hope that I'm not insane and someone actually agrees with me. And yeah, I just want to talk about it because to me it just... like, I don't want to stick on it too much because I've explained it in all my other points to the point of being out of breath. It feels redundant, it feels forced, it feels like there wasn't emotion behind it, it feels manufactured, it feels like it doesn't feel anything. I don't feel anything when thinking about it. Like I said, I laughed when he died. Not even to get started on the whole, like, subtle calls to an American spin-off. Oh my gosh. If the gun violence in this was bad, imagine the gun violence in that. I don't want to get into that, but it just doesn't feel like anything. In her having slight closure doesn't feel right, because his moment of realization at Gi-hun's speech that we thought he was having led to him giving Gaeon his Gi-hun's stuff back, and the card that wasn't explicitly stated, but I think Gi-hun would have prepared for her instead of In-ho preparing for her, with all his savings that he didn't use on the operation to find the island. But if it was In-ho that prepared it for her, we could have had that moment of him being, "Aw, that's sweet, maybe he has changed." And then he encounters a woman doing the same salesman job. And they seem to know each other, meaning this has not stopped. He is still in charge, he's still working on it, and now it's worldwide. I mean, it makes sense that people with such reach wouldn't just be in a singular country, considering most of them are foreigners, so they wouldn't just take advantage of one location. But still, you have to imagine that they want us to focus on this character that hasn't really been much of a character this whole season. They should have given us more reason to feel for him. Like, Gi-hun's sacrifice is another bullet point I have on here, but that just falls under the it fell flat for me, because there was no real emotion behind the sacrifice. There was no real motive, except for Junhee's motive to ask Gi-hoon to try and have a motive, to try and give a motive to save the baby. Do you see how many steps you have to do to get a motive in the first place? You have to go back like 7 steps to even find the source of the question, and then retrace your steps to try and figure out who's supposed to be feeling that emotion and why. It felt like work getting through that and trying to comprehend it. If it was presented to us as this like philosophically charged season instead of this just numbness, then we would have had fun picking apart the subtleties. But it wasn't subtle. Most of the character deaths you saw like 10 miles away. You just couldn't. You didn't need magnifying glasses. You didn't need a magnifying glass. You didn't need glasses to read between the lines. You could tell immediately what was going to happen, when it was going to happen, how it was going to happen, why it was going to happen. And it just didn't coincide with what they were trying to do. Because I understand the simplicity of the children's games with the simplicity and narration would have been fine had they not attempted to then pass it off as all the mistakes being part of this bigger picture that wasn't even a bigger picture, because again, the motive of the main character remained ambiguous because he tried to stop the games, but actually his entire plot meant nothing in the end. We could have had Gi-hoon kind of almost turning villainous, sacrificing the baby and saying, the reason my life is more important is because in the long run, I need to stop the games, and the end justifies the means, and him kind of going down Inho's road. We could have had him realizing that Inho was trying to help him, him being different from Inho and trying to prove how different he was from him felt like one of those, and not like other girls' efforts, because he wasn't thinking, oh, I need to protect the baby. He was just avoiding that symbiote callback. Again, they didn't use it correctly. They just used it as a way to say, the main character is going to be stupid but emotionally. But then we're going to pass him off as this suddenly genius manipulator, you see? What? Again, it's just so complicatedly uncomplicated that it's frying my brain. Point 7. The opening twist feels like a bait and switch. I didn't realise how much I've kind of gone out of order with my points, so I'm going to keep this next one brief. It's about, like you just saw, the twists and turns being predictable and not really building to anything. I didn't realise how many points would kind of coincide and extend into one another, because this first point, you guessed it, is about the baby again. How the plot twist of it being integrated in the games fell flat because it wasn't emotionally charged. There was no kind of consequence for it, except for everyone dying coincidentally at the same time after the same character was introduced, for the same stupid reasons of we have to protect the baby, which wasn't even a baby in the end because it was a bundle of CGI nerves that weren't even nerves because it wasn't real. How are we supposed to feel emotion for something that we know is nothing, right? It just didn't. The thing is, the acting was great. The acting was so good that my parents almost believed it was a real baby. And they're not the types of like, oh, look, it's an AI giraffe riding a kangaroo. Like, they wouldn't believe that. They know AI when they see it. They know CGI when they see it. They're actually quite good at spotting it. And sometimes I'm the one who doesn't spot it because of how integrated it is nowadays in the media. So, they're not bad. The actors themselves are not bad in the slightest. They conveyed emotion towards the baby in a way that felt real. But I just did not like the baby. I know, can you believe it? The person that's always like kick the child when she watches films is like, I don't like the baby. Who would have thunk it? Just feels again too much work to get through even an explanation of the vague plot. Because how are you supposed to explain this plot in a way that doesn't sound bad? If you were supposed to tell someone about the plot of season 1, they'd be like, ooh, I'm intrigued. Death games run by an evil organization to appease the upper class, utilizing the lower class as the players as entertainment, and the intricacies of the players, and how maybe there was this police officer trying to get to them, and you would have thought, wow, what a beautiful plot, I might check this out. And then season 2 being like, one of the players won last time, he's going back to selflessly try to stop the games, he's invested his time and effort, his entire plan comes down to this moment, and he's going to re-enter the games and try and stop them, but things go wrong, and he has to find a way back and out of the games while trying to survive and save all these other players. Well, then we see the front man entering the games. You're like, wow, incredible. Instead, you have season 3 and you're like, well, it's actually just a continuation of season 2, and we kind of have just done and redone games from season 1, because you cannot tell me that the train tracks were not just the glass bridge all over again. Side note. But then we had, I don't know, the pregnant girl finally gives birth. That's it. What, you wanted to know more? I mean, I guess it drops its entire plot for dismantling the upper class and trying to gain equality for all, and show the negatives of using people as if they were just entertainment for other people, and it just kind of transfers into humanity. But what about the upper class dismantling? There can be human upper class. Like, what even is humanity? Do they ever explain what humanity is? So about that, they do not explain or expand on what humanity is to them, what they're trying to convey humanity to be, but it's left ambiguously to leave the watcher entertained. The person watching is supposed to be questioning themselves. Oh, so it's filled with twists and turns that nobody ever expected. Well, no, actually, we kind of expected most of the plot to happen anyway, but still good show, you should watch it. But, like, is there anything you haven't told me that's kind of up to me to find out myself? Oh, wait, you didn't want all the spoilers included, like the front man being finally revealed to Gi-hoon? Because that was kind of, like, the main point of it. The North Korean girl finds the child. Did you want to learn more? Because there isn't exactly more to this. I guess you could see the character, the little boy from season 1, finds parents again? What do you mean, what little boy? Oh, wait. Have you forgotten who that character is? Do you see, like, my parents didn't know who that character was, and we didn't even watch season 1 that long ago. Point 8, hollow callbacks instead of actual twists and plot points. I just remembered it because I'd been kind of spoiled online about what was going to happen, so I remembered it being Sebyuk's brother. But even I was questioning, who is this guy? Because they didn't kind of introduce us to this subplot. Again, subplot on subplot on subplot on subplot. Give us a break of these flipping subplots and expand the actual plot of this film. Sorry, the series. Whatever this thing is. The episodes used to feel like their own film. That's why I got confused there. They used to feel like their own thing. Like, you could watch the episodes individually and be hooked. Like, oh, when's the sequel coming out? Wait, it's a series? Wow, I almost didn't notice because every episode is done with the amount of care that would come from a single film. But now it's just like, yeah, whatever, we'll just resolve this in the next episode. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, ignore. Yeah, okay, enough. Yeah, no more questions. Just next episode. Oh, wait, it's the finale already. Go back to season 1, you'll find most of the stuff we took as inspiration from there. And again, this leads into my next point, which I've actually pointed at before, so I'm not going to expand upon it that much more, but how it kind of breaks the rules of the game. It's supposed to be equality, yet they enter a non-equal participant in the game. So it's just kind of like, well, the baby, you see, the baby is a plot hole in itself. The entire premise of the baby is the plot hole. Because it's just like, even if you ignore the baby, there's more plot holes involving how the equality is messed up. So it's supposed to be unemotional, with kid-like games, childlike innocence disrupted by mild and extreme violence in some cases. In most cases, it comes down to the players themselves choosing how their fate will play out. But in Season 3, there was no more of that. We're gonna give you basic rules and you have to interpret and twist them in creative ways to survive. It's just like, yeah, so here's this game, play it or die. Oh, you can't play? Well, sucks to be you, I guess. Like, it would have been nice to have the VIP suggest the baby, and then Inho have this kind of dilemma between, but what about equality? What about what was promised to me? What about, would the old man agree to this? That the whole premise of the games is being disrupted. Maybe I should stop this because the games aren't what they used to be. There could have been an entire plot about how it's wrong to remove the equality from it, but again, it feels like this season is serving the upper class instead of dismantling it. Further proved by the fact that the upper class seems to be trying to humanize themselves now through it. The games, repetition, like I said, the early on torture game, where kind of half of them get wiped out immediately, but it doesn't necessarily have to be half. They're following the same formula of the red light, green light having to be almost redone in the hide and seek, because a lot of them have to be wiped out because too many have survived. There could have been this moment of Gi-hoon realizing that they changed the games regarding taking in account how many players have survived and how many they need to wipe out for the next one to even work properly. So they could have added in that the baby needed to be there because they hadn't calculated that Junhee would kill herself and that they needed an extra player. They could have had stuff that would have changed the games to be these new games. What's this new game that needs an extra player about? How is it so important? But instead we just had hide and seek. We just had the glass bridge again. But you see, we had the things from red light, green light. See, we did a callback. Haha, is it funny? Oh, but how do we integrate the tug of war? Oh, we just put a metal rope. Yes, that's how it's going to work. But how is that equal? How are older people supposed to do this really intense jumping? See? No more equality. Like, red light, green light would have been equal because we saw the old man doing it, because it's about moving and stopping. There was, but it wasn't about jumping around, prancing about. The glass bridge itself, I never really liked that game in comparison. Like, I liked how high stakes it was, but I didn't really like how it was handled in the first place. But it was kind of fine because in the end it kind of served the purpose it was intended to serve in the first place, and it was established that too many were surviving with the glass maker, so they turned the lights off to remove the element of equality because they weren't killing off as many as they should have, and that really added to it. But there was no moment of the characters noticing that the games were being changed to suit the VIPs and they were screwed either way. So they could have had the players try to be more entertaining purposefully to not get killed off. And how that was just wrong, and Gi-hoon had to realize that playing by the rules is the only way they could survive until he could get high enough to then dismantle it from the inside. And we could have had him become the front man. We could have had so many things, but it's all it could have been this, it could have been that. And then point 9, the overall pacing. The pacing. Again, they killed momentum. Scenes just linger for no reason. We had Gi-hun just kind of having an internal monologue for how many scenes? I think it was like 2 minutes, maybe? I don't even know. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't seem like that much until you realize how badly it kills everything else. You know, we don't have any more of like those, oh, it's so emotional because Gi-hun's finally opening up after so long. It just feels like he's just there and you're like, okay, it's been a minute. Can we like get on with the story and the reason we're here in the first place? Oh, you're still going. Oh, okay. Well, if you stop talking, will you go back to being the shell of a man? Because I low-key, high-key, mid-key prefer that right now. I know that point wasn't explained very well, but I don't know how to expand on something I've already explained with so much emotion. I don't know about you, side note, but when I like read bullet points and have to like expand my thoughts on it, sometimes it doesn't come off as genuine as I would. So that's why I keep like my earlier rants in at an earlier time, because I attach it to points that I otherwise wouldn't if I just went in the order that I have it written down as, so as to not forget. The second part of this point is about how the game ends and a new one begins, which renders, again, Gi-hun just completely useless, his plot completely redundant and giving it no reason. We could have had, again, the season 2 thing leading with Gi-hun, and I understand that it could have been like, okay, well, we don't want the main character again and again and again doing the same thing, but we could have had him change his role as a player to infiltrating the upper class, starting to work with Junho on dismantling it from the outside, and not participating again, but still being relevant to the story and continuing from there. But it just feels like we're just following one of the millions of random games that are happening at the same time. And we just coincidentally landed on these people, but we could have been half across the world and we could have had the same result with completely different characters, so it makes these characters completely useless. And it just made a lot of people go back to season 1 and wish so much that the actors had all come back and somehow revived all their characters. Honestly, this kind of makes the "it was just a dream" ending feel better. Again, the abrupt cuts too, the pacing, it's just all wrong. There were just such abrupt cuts between the games, but they didn't even have much of a focus on the games, which would have been fine if they'd handled their so-called expansion of characters correctly. Not actually a point, just wanted to add something between number 9 and 10. It is that the emotional beats fall flat. Side note, the kind of in-between point I wanted to add was that 2 things. Gi-hun just sobbing over the baby's entire existence in the middle of the games was probably more me than me right now, just kind of crying about why does this thing exist, but it didn't feel as emotional as it could have been because it was kind of out of nowhere. He goes from numb to emotionally just explosive. We're supposed to hate Daeho for being so emotional, but when Gi-hun does it, we're supposed to give him so much sympathy because, again, we could have seen that, oh, maybe we like Gi-hun more, but he was being unlikable and now suddenly we're supposed to feel bad for him. Like, it's understandable that, again, it ties into the humanity of it, and they could have been saying, oh, he's human too, he makes mistakes, but the suddenness of it all kind of throws you off, because it was just after, I don't know, Gwemja just dying for no apparent reason, even though there was a reason, but it wasn't made apparent to us, even though everything else is supposed to be apparent to us. Again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again, I'm tired. And then Junho being just sidelined, his plot just having like one moment of him saying why when he finally gets what he needs. It just all kind of has the up, but never lands, and it just goes down again. Point number 10. In one word, just VIPs. Well, not a word, more like an acronym, but you get the point. The next point I had prepared was about the VIPs, but again, I've spoken about them already. But I just want to add that, again, they feel like just comedic relief. They don't have any morally grey tendencies, or just, they don't show how less black and white the upper class can be, that maybe there are some good ones, but they're all drowned out by the bad ones, and or they could have gone in the direction of them all being completely bad and evil, and instead they're just kind of passed off as the entertainment for the viewer, while we give these convenient plot points that make no sense, but we're going to pass them on anyway because, you know, we need to get to where we want to get so that we can finally end this and get our money. It feels like, again, they just want the money and to be done with it, and it's boring, it's annoying and everything. If we wanted to have references, we could have had, I don't know, 007 growing into his role as 007. You know, like him wanting to be like this James Bond kind of character, and don't tell me they couldn't do that, because they did have references to other things and shows and even songs, like Icon's Love Scenario. They had lots of things in there and lots of jokes. They could have added one more for the sake of not having to hear the VIPs being the most relatable characters. Again, they are just empty shells. They're nothing. They're no one. They're supposed to be emotionless and unemotional, but at the same time, we're supposed to feel emotion from them. Like, we're supposed to hate them, but if they're the most kind of relatable when watching it, it feels like we're just seeing us commenting. Like, oh, I really hope the VIP says this because this is exactly how I feel. Like, it doesn't. And I know you could say, oh, it's supposed to make you think you're a VIP and question your entire existence too. But when was that? When was that emotion revealed? When were we supposed to feel that level of emotion from something that's just presented itself as so unimportant? So to end it, I just want to say, you know, it feels like copy-pasted shock value, just kind of comedic relief with no substance, questioning morality with no apparent reason to question it to begin with, because it sort of makes you feel almost bad for the rich for having to watch the same thing as you. And I know it's harsh criticism, but when you set the bar so high and you fall flat like this, it just... I'm not blaming the writers specifically, I'm not blaming the actors in the slightest, because the actors' performance was incredible, impeccable, and greatly executed. It got so bad at one point that 333 said, his actor said, I'm not going to play a villain anymore because of how much hate I'm getting. And I know probably those were the teenagers who aren't even supposed to be watching the show because it's rated 18 plus anyway, but side note over. The point of that is that he kind of got so much hate for playing his character so well, which just proves that, again, he played it so well. You're supposed to hate the character, not the actor. Please don't hate any of these actors or the writers. I just want to put my thoughts out there that this wasn't the fault of one person. This was the entirety of there not being heart anymore in this, that the project was manufactured, it was repetitive, re-released as something new just to get more money, more views, more interactions, boost the Netflix subscriptions, making people watch it just to get nothing out of it. And in a way, I feel like me posting this is kind of just conforming to the mold, because I'm doing exactly what they want, giving it attention, bringing eyes to it, so more people will watch it, more people will interact with it, will give them more money. But I'm just trying to give my thoughts, and I know that this review, again, isn't going to do anything, it's not going to change anything, and I really would appreciate no hate towards me as well, you know, that would be nice, but please share your thoughts in a respectful manner. Tell me if I missed anything, tell me if you want me to talk about certain points more in depth, tell me what I got wrong in your opinion, what maybe I misunderstood, but please don't attack each other, don't argue, don't do what this show did or what this show didn't do by not having the gang wars return or anything like that. But yeah, I digress. I'll leave it at this, and I hope you enjoyed. please consider checking out my Patreon and other links down below. It really helps out the page a lot, and it ensures I can put out content as frequently as I do, and in the quality that I do, and quantity as well, preferably. So you'll get early access to everything I put out, and you'll get more stuff like full streams, and access to a personal group chat between me and my members, and yeah, if you want to join the Discord, please consider doing so. It's a wonderful experience to just be able to talk to you, get video requests and stuff. So I really appreciate you being here. I really appreciate all your effort in interacting with me today, in clicking on this video in the first place. Please like, comment, subscribe, the usual YouTube stuff, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye! I hope you had as much fun as me today. Same time tomorrow. If you enjoyed, you might also like these.